Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
You're doing the intro?
Well, I was doing the intro.
I didn't know we were going to be doing that first.
I don't know. Well, damn it,
Okay.
now you just killed my vibe. Fuck it, this is now the episode. I'm back, bitches. What's up? What's good?
Gavin is back from his trip.
I just saw you like a couple hours ago, but you had obligations, and I got fucking burnt out at the end of the day because, well, we were filming another three-wheeled car.
And there's another thing I want to point out here. We happened to do this on another three-wheeled car with no roof on a day.
No windows.
And no windows on a day. We just broke a record high of 106.
Damn, I knew it was hotter than a motherfucker down there, but Jesus.
Yep, we broke the previous record by a whole 4 degrees, not even a small amount.
Wow, so the previous high for July 16th was 102?
Yep.
Yeah, and global warming and climate change is totally not a thing. But anyways.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so for review, and you got to drive it too, and I actually wish you got to drive it more. I should have tossed you the keys on the way to get gas or something. But we drove a Vanderhall Venice. So for those that know or that don't know what Vanderhall is, they are actually a Utah-based, I don't want to call them an automaker, but they make things that have steering wheels and gas and brake pedals and an automatic gearbox with car engines. But they're 3 wheels generally. So yeah, a quote-unquote car company that's from Utah. You can't buy them here. Still, to my understanding, I think did that get overturned at all?
So I just pulled up their website, and I'm looking in there. It does show green dots for places you could buy, or they call them stores, quote unquote, not dealers.
I wonder if it's like an authorized dealer kind of situation.
I think so. So I think what they do, as far as it looks from here, is you could buy things for the cars, parts for the cars, but to actually purchase a car, you would probably have to jump through some hoops.
That makes sense.
Which is, par for the course, given that Utah is one of the dozen or so states that doesn't allow direct-to-consumer purchasing of vehicles.
Well, I know Texas was a big one. I think New Jersey was a big one.
It's random shit, because it's just laws that get into place from individuals that want to protect their corner of the market share by having a dealership. So it's random states entirely.
Right.
Which is so dumb. But either way, it makes it interesting, being that they're fucking made here, and it's difficult to.
You can't buy them here. They make them here.
Yeah, but for those of you that don't know, they're not only these 3-wheeled vehicles, but they're kind of like almost jewelry, is the way I was describing it to Gavin earlier.
I think jewelry is giving it a little bit too much credit. I feel like it needs to be more glitzy or polished to be jewelry. You know, look at a Pagani Huayra, like the interior of that. Like that is jewelry. You know,
fair. Okay, so maybe not jewelry, but it's an accessory. Like it is very much something that you seem to put on for style. It's got kind of this slightly old world vibe to it with how it's styled. Thus the name of things like Vanderhall Venice,
right?
Type of stuff, and all their models kind of follow a similar suit to that, with cheeky little names to kind of give you almost a somewhat Italian vibe.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It uses a Chevy Cruze 1.4 liter that's tuned up to make about 180 to 190 horsepower. It's front-wheel drive, which I believe this is probably the only.
It's the wrong wheel drive, frankly.
Yeah, it's probably the only 3-wheeler that is front-wheel drive.
Yeah, because it is, because the Polaris Slingshot's rear-wheel drive. The Morgan 3-wheeler is still rear-wheel drive. Which it doesn't look like it would actually be, but when you like see the engine and stuff, it's rear.
Yeah.
And that's the only kind of 3-wheeler that's like in that category. You kept on bringing up the Reliant Robin, but it's a different kind of thing.
It is. I only bring it up because it is a 3-wheeler, but even that, with it being of a plebeian nature with how it was literally designed to be, is still rear-wheel drive. So it's just to point out the oddity that this is front-wheel drive.
Well, and they did that, and I should have brought this up in the review, but allegedly they wanted it to be front-wheel drive because due to apparently the architecture of making it rear-wheel drive, it was presumed by them. I don't know what actual research or development went into this thought process, but they said that it would flip if it didn't if it was rear-wheel drive, which doesn't make any sense to me. Because if it's rear-wheel drive, you have more weight of things going over the back anyway, like, either a prop shaft with a diff or your belt and, like, that hub assembly and, like, that kind of stuff, right? Like that. Also, the power is going to the rear. If anything, I feel like it'd be more easy to flip a front-wheel drive car.
Yes, I agree, because you've got not only all the weight on the front now of the entire engine and trans and drivetrain, very little weight on the rear, and of course those wheels are also doing their normal steering and braking just like they do in any four-wheeled front-wheel drive car.
Sure.
So you've just compounded the problems that a regular front-wheel drive car entails, such as like torque steer or any weird thing like that, and made it so the rear has even less control because snap oversteer is a thing.
Yeah, and oh boy, if you so much as glance at the brakes, especially in a corner, you are coming around.
You are in for a treat of a non-good variety.
It's not a treat. I wouldn't call it a treat. In for a surprise for sure.
Yeah, we don't know exactly why, but when you brake, it pulls decently hard to the left. It is roughly the same amount of pull every time, but it is still surprising every time.
And the brakes even, if forgetting about how the car like moves around, the brakes are still like extremely touchy.
Very. Because it looks like they're probably the original brakes also from a Chevy Cruze. They look fairly standard, like what would come on a normal car, but this car weighs, well, it's not a car technically, this vehicle weighs half of whatever a normal four-door compact weighs.
Right.
So all of a sudden, that's a shit ton of braking for that light of a platform.
Yeah, so I'm on their website right now as well. They're saying 194 horsepower, 203 foot-pounds. So that checks out.
Yes.
Yeah, they have like an interesting configurator. 1460 pounds. It has an overall length of 143 inches. So, like, it's not large. It's not, like, super long.
No.
Also, your windshield is 8.75 inches tall, which was a complaint of mine.
Yeah, it's not very... It'll deflect the wind okay, but your sight line is pretty easily impaired.
It sucks. Yeah, it's not good. So I used to work for Everyday Driver doing camera and video stuff. And I stopped doing that in 2016. And the last video shoot I did for them was of a Vanderhall. It was the Laguna, which was, I think, their first run. Those were, A, expensive, and B, less bespoke, even though they kept on using the word bespoke, than what we drove today. And so the base price of a Venice right now is $29,950. The price for the Laguna was by the time you're tax, title, license, you're in the 80s. You're in the low 80s, which was honestly flabbergasting. You'll spit your drink right the fuck out. It's not worth that at all. Pick your fucking Cayman, or you could pick Lotai. Use like Exige and stuff. Not Exige. I'm sorry, Avoras for that. If we're talking about current pricing for, and early NSXs, those are in the 80s, like high 70s, low 80s for the early ones, like the NA1, like that you drove on camera. Not worth that at all for a car that doesn't have all four wheels and is like, it's just not that competent of a vehicle. It's entertaining, but it's not good.
So here's the funny thing. I pulled up the Laguna on Wikipedia just because I was curious what it said about it. And I have to read this paragraph because this paragraph is hilarious. The luxuriously decorated passenger cabin made it possible to accommodate 2 passengers, adapting numerous design elements, such as a steering wheel from General Motors.
Yeah, from the Camaro.
But like
That's also clearly someone from Vanderhall wrote that.
I know. Luxuriously decorated passenger cabin, and then to immediately say a steering wheel from General Motors. It shows you how they were trying to grasp at some straws for it.
They really
also,
were.
Apparently, the Laguna actually was available in a 6-speed manual.
Really?
According to Wikipedia, take that for what you will.
I don't remember that being a thing.
I never had any experience, so I have nothing to look forward to. But if it was, I mean, that would be an improvement, because the weird thing is, so the Venice has a 6-speed auto, the newer one that we drove. It wasn't bad. It was acceptable for what the car is. It was never terribly out of line, did shifts roughly when it was supposed to, and didn't go crazy or have like a 2-second plus delay. However, on a car like that, where it is all about the experience, where the experience doesn't necessarily have to be canyon driving, but like the experience is you interacting with the thing, whether that be visually or physically, that manual would probably have been a good improvement.
It might have been. It depends on the manual. You know, if it was like a rubbery thing like on modern BMWs, then yeah, like,
true.
I guess maybe. And if the automatic was any better, like if it was, say, a dual clutch, I do think it would have taken away from the experience a bit for it being too good. Like, the thing about, you know, BMW DCT, Porsche PDK, Volkswagen dual clutch is the rest of the car is to such a level that I personally don't think that dual clutches in a lot of those cars is really detracting from the experience. Like, if you're talking about a 992 or 991 GT3 RS, right?
Yeah.
Or even look at, you know, C8 Corvette or C7 Corvette ZR1. I don't think really adding a manual to those cars is necessarily, except for the C8, I don't think that a manual would necessarily make the car so much better. Like, you wouldn't drive, say, a Pagani Huayra and be like, you know, I really wanted to like it, but it didn't come in a manual. Like, no, you wouldn't say that.
No, I would agree. I think that in fact, Pagani is a great example, because I think the Zonda was a fantastic manual car, and I think it worked great as such. And the Huayra was them trying to turn a massive new page with bringing in some more modern design technology, etc.
Turbos, first of all.
And turbos as well, and really change up the experience while still staying true to their roots. And I think it worked better as the automatic that it came out with, and they even tried to make that a little bit better by including that fancy shifter in the middle that allegedly feels amazing, even though it's an auto.
Right.
And I agree. It would have to be the right manual, and God knows, whatever.
Maybe something gated? Like, if there's maybe something gated, that would be interesting. Like, gated shifter with, like, exposed linkage would be interesting. But there's also not that much space, like, inside the cabin. So you're making concessions for something that's also very much more expensive to manufacture to slightly improve the experience.
Possibly. Yeah,
but then it's still also front-wheel drive. So, like, where's the purity there, you know?
No, I agree. And if you think about whatever could have been bolted to that, like if they just borrowed a transmission again from General Motors, which they did make a 6-speed Chevy Cruze, so that's probably what the Laguna had, I have heavy doubts that it would actually have felt any good.
Right.
It's more wishful thinking that, like, if it had a good manual in it, it would be good. But I also understand why that wasn't the case, and it seems like they probably did a little work maybe on tuning to make the automatic shift a little bit better than I imagine any Chevy Cruze ever would.
Right.
So that worked good. It did. So if you're okay with me talking about, like, my little brief experience with it.
I think that would be better, actually, so I don't completely scoop myself.
So, I got to drive it for about a few miles going uphill on East Canyon. So I got a couple hairpins in, some good corners, and some good straights. I got a very brief, about 15-minute stint, but also got a decent amount of things in that brief. I enjoyed it most while just flooring it in a straight, because it isn't fast, but it is quick. It does move along at a moderate pace, but that was where it felt most comfortable. Once you hit a corner, it was both at the same time comfortable because you had a lot of front-end grip with a front-wheel drive chassis. You could kind of give it more beans and have it pull in, and uncomfortable because entering the corner, you'd have that brake pulling to the left like we talked about, which I have a theory on that I'll get to in a second, and at the same time be kind of questioning what's really going on in the back end. You can only sort of feel it, whereas with like the slingshot, I'd say you had a lot more feeling over what was actually happening behind you than this, and that's probably due to the fact that that wheel was the driven wheel.
Yes, I will add to this. So the thing about the front wheel drive aspect of that is I feel in the driving experience more limited when it comes to what you can do or want to do in the car compared to the Polaris Slingshot, like as you mentioned, being rear-wheel drive. The Polaris, in my experience, felt like it could be driven a couple of different ways. You could drive it like a GTI and drive it like a front-engine, front-wheel drive car.
Yeah.
And treat your throttle and braking and steering inputs, like that. And it would be kind of a similar, like, experience, except, you're completely exposed and you're out in the open, whatever. And also have a decent manual gearbox.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that coin, you could also treat it like a hoon machine and like a rear-wheel drive, like, honestly, like a Mustang or something, pitch it into the corner, like a hairpin corner in second gear, and push your foot down, the back end comes out, and you actually can catch it. I probably slid that thing a dozen times.
Yeah.
The Polaris, not the Vanderhall. The Vanderhall is one where you really need to maintain traction 100% of the time because you're not catching it. You can have the back end rotate, like with minor throttle liftoffs, like, if you're, say, 55% throttle or something, and you lift your foot to, say, 35%, suddenly mid-corner because you feel like you might be washing a little wide, then the rear end will start to meet up with you and you actually rotate a little better. Similar things happen in my Fiesta ST. So that is a car that really ought to be driven like a front-wheel drive car. I'm questioning the purity of it because when you buy something like that, you're either, frankly, the Laguna owner or the Venice owner or whatever, the Carmel is the other one owner, you're not, like, you're doing some spirited driving. Like, it's a great 6/10 car, and I told the owner straight to his face, like, this is a 6/10 owner or a 6/10 car. It's really where it shines. It's been a long time since I've driven an Alpha 4C, but I've heard a lot of people say similar things about that and how twitchy and unpredictable as fuck that car is.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is similar in that way. It's really a car to be seen in, is really it. It's a car to, I think it's a fifth car. You keep it at your vacation bungalow in Santa Barbara and you drive it down, not even pop to the shop because there's no trunk space. But you just, go for a Sunday drive down to Ojai and, cruise up the Highway 33. You're not, blazing hair on fire for the Highway 33.
No, at most it's going down to get coffee or dinner. But to wrap up my bit on like the feeling of driving it, so it like a lot of things, it seems to be quite confused when it comes to the driving because it tries to be relatively exciting with that aspect, but as the things we just talked about impacted, it doesn't really end up being that exciting. You can't really extract more than 5 to 6/10 from it without it getting quite hairy, so it becomes rather different. Now,
right.
It has like two creature comforts. It has a couple cup holders, it has cruise control, and this one had a radio system put into it. However, I think that was an option you could get with them, but not this one. This one had an aftermarket one.
I think this one was a base.
Yeah.
Because I saw other options as well, and who knows when they updated these options. He said his was like a 2019, I believe.
It had to be older than that because the tires were 2017.
Doesn't have to be older than that, because he was saying that like when we were at his shop, like the 2018s and 17s and 18s or something like that had oh fuck, what was it? What he was telling us, the really
It was bad
tedious-
electrical steering rack programming.
Yeah, because it would basically give out intermittently, like mid
So,
corner.
yeah, and my Audis have this, but it's hydraulic, not electric, where when you're going on the freeway, it'll actually kind of shut off so that it's a little bit tighter, not quite as assisted, and then when you're going around town, it'll boost
That's
up.
more intentional though.
This, what would happen is it seemed to have that, like it maybe was a feature, and then it became a bug because it would just oscillate back and forth between on, off, and make it so all of a sudden you had no resistance to your steering and
Right.
end up through a corner, turning the wheel way more than intentional, which in this thing would be nothing short of a near-death sentence.
Yeah.
And speaking of steering, I do also have to acknowledge the hilarious, absurd turning circle of this thing.
Oh my god. Yeah, you looked up the numbers and it was more or less within spitting distance of a short bed Tacoma.
Yeah, so a short bed Tacoma is 40 feet. This thing's 39 feet. To give you some reference, and Gavin brought this up, a notoriously bad car for turning circle is the Ford Focus RS. That's 36 feet. So this takes 3 feet longer, even being a smaller vehicle, to make a U-turn.
There's
than
a pretty
Focus
wide.
RS.
There's a pretty wide road. It's 2 lanes, like 2 lanes total. That goes from the freeway, Interstate 80, up to East Canyon, which is where we shot today. The Interstate 80 is the overpass that runs over the road, and we drove down towards the end of the day to set up for some more follow footage. I went ahead of Justin and turned around before him, and I could not make a U-turn. I had to do a 3-point.
Oh, boy. Yeah. And that was far from the only time of day that happened. And this is probably one of only a handful of vehicles we've ever not been able to make a proper turnaround in. Like, even... So the Roscion doesn't have a great turning circle, but even that thing, when we were shooting in East Canyon, I was able to do U-turns.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. On some of the turnouts, you could not make it. I was able to make it in the Roscion.
Which is a much longer and wider car.
Yes. It's kind of pathetic, and I think that's another issue that's tied entirely in to the fact that this is front-wheel drive, because they couldn't make the wheels turn anymore. Because the packaging of the engine and transmission is already so wide, and they're trying not to make it even more wide up front. Interesting decisions. I mean, I could never see myself owning one. However, I will say, having driven this one now, I could see myself renting one for a reasonable price.
I was thinking the same thing about this after the fact, actually, after we tore down cameras and, after you dropped me off at home. This is a car to rent out. The Polaris Slingshot is, famously well known as a car that, you either go to Las Vegas, you go to Los Angeles, and you go somewhere that's like warm and sunny most of the time, and you can rent one of these for a couple of days. Most people that you see driving them, they don't own the car.
Exactly.
They're most likely rentals. So I could definitely see that for this as well. Maybe it's a great 3-wheeler. I don't want to say great 3-wheeler. It is an option as a 3-wheeled experience for someone who can't drive stick or is uncomfortable with driving stick. There is it's an 6-speed automatic, and if you want to shift some things yourself, you absolutely can. I didn't talk about this in the video, but the shifter position, holy shit, dude. It is right at your ass in the seat.
Yep.
You have to push down, which the top of the shifter is barely above the seat anyway. So you have to reach, push down, and then pull back or push forward depending on what you're doing. If you want to call them gates or the slots for each drive mode, transmission mode, however you want to call that too, were extremely tight and close together. I actually was in drive when I thought I was in manual and popped into neutral a couple times. Luckily, it's a torque converter, so like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, it's not very well done, and it took me a minute to figure out that you had to push down as well. Like it's not labeled in any way like, hey, push down on the top of the knob to move it back. It's very unconventional.
Yeah. I mean, everything about this car is unconventional. But,
Yeah.
we've done a lot of ragging on it. There's a lot of things about the car with the construction of it that are pretty special and bespoke. Not even just the milled aluminum. I think they're aluminum. Side mirrors, the roll hoops that go behind each seat. We actually didn't even showcase this either, but there was storage behind each seat that could have held helmets, just like in the slingshot. The interior was put together for an early car company, an early boutique or novelty car company that isn't charging six figures for cars. Not bad. It wasn't bad. It was nicer than a Lotus Elise, which is not saying much, but it was a nicer place to be than a Lotus Elise. I'll give it that.
Yeah, and I think that they got most, not all, we've already mentioned a couple times where they didn't, of the ergonomics right. So, like, the pedals were fine. The left-handed shifter, which is just basically a bump shifter for up and down, that actually felt pretty good, and I felt was in a decent place to just reach over and grab it real quick.
Well, and it's on, like, the car doesn't have doors, but there is, I guess, a taller door sill, or what you could reference as a door sill, that it rests on. And your arm can totally rest there and be completely happy.
Yeah, it was a nice height. So they did do a good amount of thinking with that. And there was one thing I noticed, and I'm trying to remember what it was, that I was like, I bet you they thought of that. Oh, yeah. For whatever reason, the shifter never got absurdly hot, the little bump shifter.
It started to get warmer, like, really towards the end of the day before we dropped the car off at 2:45 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
On what we've already described as the hottest day of the year. Only then is when it started to get actually kind of warm. And the car's been outside all day. So hats off to Vanderhall for figuring out how to do that.
Yeah, because that's a lot of things. That's something that even a lot of auto manufacturers have not been able to figure out. I did like the gauges. So the original cars, like the Laguna, had a Chevy. It's actually from a Chevy Spark. It's a gauge cluster.
Yeah.
It's a big tachometer and then a little digital display, and it looked kind of out of place. This had
Very
some
much
bespoke gauges to it because they didn't look like anything else, and I think they looked great. I think they fit with the design pretty well.
Yeah,
and
they did a little swoop when you turn it on, like a lot of cars do.
And I think that's where this car shines. The design of it, the bits of it that are bespoke to it, such as the body, the gauges, the little bits of the interior, the little aluminum things, the wheels, the package visually fits very well.
For someone who's not like a car enthusiast like you or I, maybe a retired architect or a retired designer who lives in, the parts of Southern California where it's, mild kind of all year round, that is like the perfect use case for this car. Kind of everywhere else it starts to fall flat. Not really meant for super high speeds, like long distance freeway stuff. It's not really meant for that, especially with the center wheel in the back. Like a motorcycle, it tram lines a little bit with the ruts in the road that are found more commonly on highways and freeways rather than like the squiggly canyon roads that you and I like to drive on.
Yeah, I found that the reverse of that out with the Robin again, because this is just changing.
Oh yeah,
with
a wheel that steers. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just changing it around, which I guess might be a little bit better because then at least your two steering wheels are in the regular ruts.
Right.
But either way, the way the owner described it is, if you're going for a pothole or something, even just a bump, you have to choose. No matter what, you're going to hit it, either with the front wheels or the rear wheels. Your choice. Pick your poison. It's unavoidable. But I really do think it seems like whoever their design team is when it comes to the just the overall package was really good, because it has some cliche elements that if done wrong could have been pretty bad, like the side pipes. If they were just ridiculous and huge, like most side pipes end up being because they're such a standout feature, it would have not looked good. But these hid very well. It's still silly that it has side pipes giving a little 4-cylinder, but they both function. It has a Y pipe that splits them into both, and you know what? It worked with the design, with what they were going for. Same with like the little fenderettes over the 2 front wheels.
Those worked because the tires today got hot, and I could tell because pulling out of a dirt pullout, I could see the tires picking up little pebbles and rocks and stuff, and it was catching them. So
yeah, so they both form and function seem to work very well because they also didn't stand out. Like if you think of something like a Plymouth Prowler that also has those fenderettes, they are a core design feature of the car, and you cannot get away from them. These seem to be the perfect balance of just big enough that they caught everything, but it's not the defining feature of the car.
Yeah, that would have ruined the front end for sure.
Yeah, because you could still see they only covered about 1/4 of the tire. The rest of it was pretty exposed, which is honestly the way it should be with the way that car's designed. It leaves your eye to some of the mechanical details, which were also well finished. I was looking at it like the engine through the side, and even like the frame is almost black powder coated in a really flat black, really well finished. And I was like, I can see where some of the money goes. It's one of those weird things where the money clearly doesn't go to dynamics or even to like bespoke engine or things like that, because that would just be way too expensive. But they clearly put a lot of thought in some little attention to detail items, such as even, again, in the engine bay where usually you don't see much. But on this car, since so much is exposed, you're going to get a visual of that at some point. So instead of leaving it unfinished, it's done nice and well, and the lighting is kind of cool because it's recessed in the grille. And
it's very steampunk. The car is it's more forward-thinking steampunk, whereas a Morgan 3-wheeler is steampunk in the dictionary.
Yes,
levels.
It is the dictionary definition of we want to go backwards quite a few years.
Yeah, whereas the Vanderhall is definitely kind of like, it kind of wants to do that, but like it's also more reliable. It feels like more of a compromise with that a little bit. I don't know. I have many feelings, but you can see those feelings on Exhibition of Speed's YouTube. If you're listening to this, you're probably already subscribed, but if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell so you know when we do stuff, because we're kind of erratic with when we post things, and we like for you to see them all because we just try to fit this in where we can in life. I've been burning the candle at both ends a little bit, which is why next week I'm actually this next week I am taking time. I'm taking a whole week of work off and just gonna fuck off to Sun Valley and Boise and just get away for a little bit. And you're gonna take your trip to Canada later. I don't know how public we've been about that. Have we talked about that?
No, so I basically 3 things happened at once. I'm getting married later this year, so we needed to do something with a honeymoon, but my significant other, Bryce, works in retail, so anytime in December is basically a no-go, and that's when we're getting married, is in December. So on top of that, we both got our passports a while back and haven't been able to use them, and neither of us has been to Canada. So therefore, Canada became a thing, and to make it even more of an occasion, we're going to try out for the first time using an electric car on a road trip, just because we got a good deal from Hertz, where it's honestly pretty cheap, $700 for 2 weeks. So
not bad.
No, really, genuinely, like not cheaper than gas, of course. Like obviously, if we drove our own car and spent gas, we'd spend like less than renting a car plus supercharging. But it's a cheap enough price to use that trip as a way to try out something completely new that neither of us have experienced.
Right.
Which is seeing how it is to do an electric car road trip. So that'll be fun, and we're kind of going all the way up through, of course, Idaho, Oregon, and staying with a family friend up there. And then we're going to drive the coast and ferry over to Victoria Island, not drive through to mainland Canada, which actually, come to find out, is a happy little accident, is honestly the easiest way to enter Canada because you won't run into any bottlenecks. Unlike a border crossing, where if it's really busy, you could wait for hours.
Right.
So we basically cross over there. We're going to spend 2 days on Victoria Island and then spend the rest of the time in kind of Vancouver and the British Columbia area. So it'll be really fun. Hopefully they don't have the crazy heat wave that they did at this time last year, where they were also in the hundreds.
Jeez.
But I don't think they will. So far, it's been looking, as I've been able to look out at the temperatures, like it'll be in the high 70s, low 80s, which will be amazing.
Yeah, and so we're kind of going through a heat wave right now, as we said earlier. But and let me just look up Sun Valley weather because I know it's going to be good. Yeah, tomorrow is going to be a high of 82 and low of 50. And here it's going to be high, like it's in the middle hundreds. It's going to be like 105 plus, I think. Like I saw 107 at one point. But yeah, this whole trip is going to be highs in like somewhere in the low to mid 80s, and then yeah, lows in the 50s. So it'll be nice to get out of the heat for both of us.
Oh yeah, no, it'll be really, really, really nice. I'm excited. It's the second trip that me and Bryce have taken together. Last time we went to Tennessee, and that was kind of fun, but it should be fun, especially to leave the country. He's never left the country, so this will be...
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just America's top hat. I get it, all the fucking jokes, whatever. However, it's still legally leaving the country. You're not in America anymore.
Yeah.
And so even though some would argue that it doesn't count because it's still in the same landmass, I say it does because it's still very different. You're changing currencies, Everything's changing. So that will be fun. I don't know, moving on to a different topic, if you heard about this week, did you hear about what Hyundai released or announced?
Yeah, the Ioniq 5 N line, or the N.
Yes, the N, which my curiosity is piqued because they have a few things in here that are rather interesting. So they announced 601 horsepower, 545 pound-feet of torque, and then...
Oh, I thought it was 640. As if that makes a
Yes.
difference.
So this is where things get a little weird. So with N Grin Boost active, and that's grin as in like the facial feature grin.
That came out... Was that with Veloster N or with Elantra N?
I think it was Elantra, I think. But either way, it jumps the output temporarily to 641.
Yeah.
Now, it also says they're making a claim as the first electric vehicle to simulate an 8-speed dual clutch.
I call bullshit.
I am concerned. I appreciate, if I can carefully choose my words
I don't
here.
know. This has been happening with CVTs for over a decade.
It has. I appreciate the thought. I have massive skepticism as to whether or not it will actually feel that great. They call it E-Shift, and they're trying to make it so that it will mimic, obviously, the gear changes as well as some of the sensations. So they're basically programming into the electric motors inefficiency.
We need to let go of the idea of a manual gearbox is going to save electric cars or make electric cars interesting, because it's just going to take that experience and make it worse. It just is. You're not going to improve. It's similar to the notion that I said about like the Pagani Huayra. Like the whole point about like the whole performance benefit to an EV is that it is just one big shove.
Yeah.
The notion of changing gears, it's bullshit. It's snake oil. Just no. Stop it.
No, I'm in agreement. I would like to feel it for myself before I make a final judgment, but I'm not necessarily a fan of that. That's sadly, and I'm going to get to these two things first. Only the first thing that I'm not a fan of. The second thing is N Active Sound Plus, which is basically giving it internal combustion sounds. So it has 8 internal and 2 external speakers that you can emulate engine sounds with. Again, I see where you're going. I don't think it's the right way, and I don't think we should be doing that shit. It's not good. It just, we need to move on. They can be separate things. I know that we're trying to look for this melding of two different worlds to try to help people ease a transition, especially with performance cars, because right now you have performance internal combustion cars and somewhat performance electric cars, depending on what you're looking at. And they're two very different worlds, and I can see that we're trying to draw a parallel. I don't
Well, and
think
also the internal combustion sports car is also dying in in return for internal combustion performance SUVs.
Yes.
And they're throwing down numbers that would have rivaled supercars from 10 years ago. And people are, and that's an example of trying to have your cake and eat it too.
Exactly. So it's really difficult because I look at those two things, which are just hilariously dumb and cliche, and I don't really need any of those. But then I look at some of the other headlining features of this, and it's like 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds with a little micro hatchback type of thing, and 161 mile an hour top speed is not too shabby either for an EV. That's on the higher end. They do struggle to do that. They've got 16-inch front rotors, which are larger than its big brother, the Kia EV6, which is a much heavier car.
Right. I mean, I'm intrigued and I'm excited. I think there's some gimmicks that come along with the Ioniq 5, N. I think that there's some kind of dumb gimmicks that come with that, but I think it's going to be a cool vehicle, all in.
As long as I can turn off those gimmicks, as long as I can turn off the sound, and as long as I can turn off the simulated 8-speed dual clutch, I'm fine.
Yeah,
it looks great.
Oh, there's gonna be a mode for the 8-speed, transmission mode or whatever. When you're just putting it in normal drive, it's not gonna drive like that.
Yeah, and it has around 200 miles of range, so it's a little bit lower on range. But again, this is not something that you're anticipating getting a shit ton of range. Now, they haven't announced a price, but the worry is that it will be somewhere in the $70,000 range.
I'd be surprised if it was less than that. I would be shocked. This is gonna totally be. I think 70 is going to be on the low end. I wouldn't be surprised if they start at 79. Options to bring it up into the higher 80s.
Yeah.
Markup is going to put it over 100.
Yep, you nailed it right there with the final one. It probably will. It will probably be brushing a 6-figure car. Given the negatives I said at first, I am excited to see where they take this, and I just hope that it's as good as it looks, as long as some of those things can be turned off and disabled, which I'm assuming they probably can. Mm-hmm. And I do think it takes the Ioniq 5 body, which was already kind of unique in and of itself.
Yeah.
And turning it into an N car, I think they did a very good job. It actually kind of takes that Envision 74 concept, some of the stuff from that, and puts it in practice on the front end.
A little bit, yeah, for sure. That would be an interesting daily for somebody. Like, if you have like a sports car or something that actually is like a fun, a sensation car, a fun, you're doing it for an event kind of thing. Like you're going out for dinner and the dinner's in the mountains and you have to go drive through the mountain, like that kind of thing. But like to have like a daily, like I'm just like picturing like this Ioniq 5N, like with snow tires on it, like, going through powder and shit. Like I think that would be a riot.
I completely agree. And I think it would excel at that because the Ioniq 5, Hyundai Kia in general has done a fantastic job of making their EVs interesting compared to other brands where they're either Tesla or bland quite often.
Tesla is in its own world.
They are. Tesla is wrapped up in a cloud in Elon's brain.
Yes.
But looking at this, I'm actually reading through some of the comments on this Car and Driver article with the Ioniq 5, and I agree with a lot of them. Like, some of them echoed the same sentiments of, like, please allow me to turn off the 8-speed stuff and whatnot. But others are talking about how I don't know how Hyundai ended up becoming the most exciting EV makers in the realistically affordable space, but I'm here for it. Totally
100%.
100%.
Wait. You're not super stoked on the Brie Larson Nissan Ariya?
No, not at all.
I've seen a few, and I'm utterly shocked, to be honest.
Oh, it is. It's tragic.
It's not good.
And then this other one right here, it seems to me that the Koreans are producing and upgrading new models faster than other companies can hold board meetings. Their turnaround must be the envy of the industry.
Damn, that's a good one. Who said that?
So it was just a guy named Floret on Car and Driver comments.
Shout out Floret.
That is a good point because I think that's true. They've just been on a roll for like 5 years now, really turning out nothing but almost bangers.
Yeah, for sure.
Just sincerely fantastic. And it's weird because I have to give props to this because most of the cars that are coming out now, all of these EVs, are actually because they cut down the Stinger production. So the factory that the Stinger was mostly made in, it was made in 2 factories. They took one and retooled it to make all these EVs a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So that made the Stinger production fall way down, which is fine. It is what it is. But
I'm still pissed.
I am as well. I wish it had a little bit longer time to live life, but I'm glad to see that that wasn't all for naught, that they're putting these EVs that they're making out there, and they're actually good. So it wasn't just like this was more profitable, we're doing this. It's like, no, we see where we want to go as a brand, and we're doing that, and we're doing it damn well.
Yeah.
It wasn't wasted effort, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for that. Somebody actually made a comment here, one other comment, saying, I guarantee this will probably be the best performance EV for under 100K. Not that that's a large market, because there's just not that many of them. But he's saying that he thinks that this would probably, way better than a Tesla Model 3.
I would much rather be in that than in Model 3. 100%.
100%. It's got the colors, it's got the looks, it's got everything. And I think your point about it being somebody's daily is bang on. Because think about that. If we think about this like perfect utopian world of like EVs and charging and stuff, in theory, if that was your daily, and you had another car that you could go do fun things, or heaven forbid road trips in, so that you didn't have range anxiety, because this doesn't seem to have that great of alleged range as far as rumors go. If this was your around town car and you could just pull back into your garage, plug it in, it's ready for whenever you need it next, and you never have to go to practically service the damn thing or to fill it up. Fantastic.
I mean, how great of a 3-car collection would it be if you had if we're talking 3 cars and the Ioniq 5N is your daily. Here's a new game for you. We'll pick one car and you have to pick 2 others around it. Cayman GT4 RS as your track car, and then I don't know. Oh shit. Like a flying spur as your road trip car.
Oh yeah. And then that's
a weird hodgepodge.
Then this is your around town daily?
Yeah.
That would be a dream.
Or a Cullinan or something, so you can go to Costco.
Yeah, all 3 of those. Even if you had this as your daily, to be honest, they're all plenty different enough, but they're all doing what they probably excel somewhat best at.
Yeah.
A Rolls Royce of any kind on the freeway is exactly what it's designed to do, or trundling around town while your driver's driving you. Mm-hmm. A Porsche of that nature on the track, exactly where it belongs.
That's what it's built for. That's not meant to go to Cars and Coffee at all.
No, sorry to all those that take them, and we appreciate that you take them.
I'm not sorry. Kiss my ass.
And then a Hyundai Kona N doing little zippy errands. Oh, I would have a fucking riot.
Ioniq 5N?
Sorry, Ioniq 5N.
I also wouldn't mind a Kona N, honestly. I think that would be kind of interesting.
No, agreed. But the Ioniq 5N zipping around, doing little errands around town, that would be fun. Especially with no noise, hopefully, as long as you can turn it off, and just being able to accelerate blissfully from a light at blistering speed.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I'm excited. We'll see when they come out. They're 2024, so I'd imagine they're going to start landing the end of this year to some degree or another.
Crossing our fingers.
Crossing our fingers, indeed. I want to see one of these really bad, and I want it to be good because it needs to be. But yeah. Anyways, I don't really have too much more else to add. Do you have anything more to add, on the Vanderhall or anything?
No, just it's gonna come out sometime. I have a lot of videos to edit through, and I haven't had a whole lot of time to do so recently. So please be patient. And yeah, I'm tired, and I actually need to go pack for Idaho. So I need to go, and I need to eat food because it is 5:30 and haven't really had a meal today. Except for the half-eaten breakfast sandwich that you had already eaten. So,
sorry.
Justin is a thoughtful man. He really is. He I didn't ask him to do this at all. He just bought me a breakfast sandwich from Maverick today, which is a nice thought until he starts eating it before getting to me.
To be clear, I bought a 2-pack of these breakfast sandwiches, and I ate one, and I was like, oh, well, I can leave the other one for Gavin, not realizing in my tired stupor that I had already taken 3 bites out of it.
My God.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we're operating
dickhead.
on fumes. So, speaking of operating on fumes, I'm going to go fill my belly as well, so...
Cool. Awesome. Well, you have a good night, sir, and we will all talk to you later. Yes?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.